The original 2017 release of Avengers is a massive mess. That's kind of obviously edited from a different version and had new funny scenes added, which feel more like silly outtakes than actually meant to be in the film. And due to fan demand and crying and screaming and begging, we finally got the Zack Snyder director's cut. It's really cool that the studio actually listened to the fans and finally released it. But I do feel like a lot of people overhype it. It's not as fantastic as they want to say. It is super overlong, and the color in the film is awful. Some of the scenes look like they might as well just be pitch black screens. Like every time there's multiple versions of a show or movie or whatever, it's usually the best is found somewhere between both of them. But anyways, this is our introduction to the three other Avengers. Ezra Miller is a very not great person in real life, but strictly just looking at them as an actor, they do a good job as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, even though they never call him Spider-Man in the film. His outfit's okay, I'm not a huge fan of it being so armored. And he kind of acts a lot like Miles, but a lot of adaptations get that wrong. Ray Fisher as Colossus. I've never been a huge fan of Colossus being turned into one of the main Avengers. Since they started doing that in Marvel Now, I feel like he should stay as one of the main X-Men instead. He gets a lot of time to shine and show his frustrations of being the big metal guy. But then when Joss Whedon came in from the original Justice League to edit down this film, they cut a lot of his scenes for the worst. His design's kind of, you can kind of tell there's a lot of frustration with Ray Fisher and Joss Whedon because he's not that great in this film. But he does get to say his line of Booyah. I almost wish they used the guy who played Colossus in the Fantastic Four Max series instead. Now, Jason Momoa as Thor is a class act. I love it. Even though basically everyone, including him, has talked about how they wanted him to play Wolverine instead. But it's kind of obvious why Warner cast Jason in the role, because the mainstream idea of Thor, especially the Marvel version, influenced by the old 73 Superhero Squad series. Oh, ha ha, Thor is so lame. Thor sucks. Thor sucks LP. I've seen that Big Bang Theory episode where they dress like the Avengers like a billion times. I will repeat this every single time to my son. And the comics for a while have definitely been pushing against the joke, so of course they would cast super macho Jason Momoa as Thor to get rid of it. He's just so good in this role, even if he has Stormbreaker instead of Mjolnir, which will be explained later. And then the whole reason why the Avengers are assembled is because they have to deal with Cole Obsidian, who looks terrible in the original release, and actually kind of good in the Snyder Cut. And then for some reason, the Whedon cut, they completely cut out Thanos, the whole big villain of the saga, apparently. Just not in the film. They're looking for the Infinity Gems, and Cole gets the Space Gem and the Power Gem, and Iron Man has this whole nightmare scene. It's such a scary potential future. Jared Leto is actually kind of good as Justin Hammer in the Snyder Cut. They find the Soul Gem and they use it to resurrect Captain America and deal with Cole. Too bad they went through all that effort to resurrect Henry Cavill's Captain America, just for the man who started the whole series to never get a sequel, not even a planned one, and they never did it, and be reduced to just 2 more cameos. Iron Fleck didn't even get his own solo movie somehow, despite being Iron Man, and he gave up the role because of just how messy this series is. And that whole end credits on the yacht, League of Our Own, setting up the Lethal Legion, sadly goes nowhere, as this is our last time seeing Jesse Eisenberg as Zemo. And our only time seeing the new Executioner. He got a little more time to shine in the Snyder Cut, just a little bit in the nightmare scenes. But he was intended to be the main villain in the Iron Man solo film, of all things, instead of the Colossus one. Then the Snyder Cut, they set up Hulk, and that goes 0 places. Originally it was meant to be Nova. Apparently they did film it, but I guess because of Ryan Reynolds' failed Nova film, they decided to cut it and re-edit it, which is so sad. But after all of that, Thor's solo film is awesome. I know someone whose favorite movie is this, and absolutely it is great and deserving of it. This is definitely the best Marvel Extended Universe film. Everyone in this film just does a great job. Like Dolph Lundgren as Odin is excellent. Definitely one of his best roles. Patrick Wilson as Loki is perfect. like him taking the Odin Force and becoming king of Asgard. He's just so conniving and backstabbing, and at the end when he gets the full Loki armor, so good. Even though he does look a lot more like classic comic book Thor, which I kind of thought was how the sequel was going to end, but that's a story for another time. Gore the God Butcher in this film is also great. He hates Thor for very reasonable reasons, and he is very determined and looks fantastic in this film. Willem Dafoe is great as always as Heimdall, even though everyone and their dog wanted him to play Justin Hammer. If he was ever going to play Justin, he probably should have played him against Armored Avenger Returns style Ben Affleck, but whatever. Even Amber Heard as Jane Foster is great in this movie, and she's a terrible person. And her and Thor have to travel to different realms to try and get Mjolnir to stop Loki. And honestly, the relationship between Thor and Jane is really cute in this film. And after one run-in with Gore in Norway, they end up in Helheim and find Thor's mother, Frigg. And she found Mjolnir down there, and Thor tries lifting it, big thunder crash, and then boom! Jason Momoa in the classic Thor costume looking awesome. He brings the Frost Giants to Asgard to help him. He kicks Loki's ass, but then Frigg shows up, and Loki surrenders so they can actually use him in future films instead of just needlessly killing him off, unlike all these other bloodthirsty comic book films. Even Gore survived at the end, and he will get the sword in the sequel. Great film. Zachary Levi's Captain Marvel film is also really good. Zachary Levi is just like Henry Cavill because he was absolutely born to play a comic book role, and he is so perfect in the role as Captain Marvel. The kid in the film is really good as well, even though he is a tad bit too old for the role. It's really cool seeing the Captain Marvel core, even if Carol Danvers is very underutilized in this film. Norex the Skrull is a great villain who really wanted to be Captain Marvel, but the Kree said no to the Skrull, so it got him really bitter. And then when he got the Mind Gem, he took his revenge. It's a little obvious he originally was meant to be Dwayne Johnson's Sentry, but Dwayne Johnson is a petty little bitch who didn't want to lose a fight, so he got his own film later. And the whole end credits where Psycho Man meets Norex setting up the microverse would have been really, really cool if this actually went anywhere. And I love seeing them use like actual toys in the film of the Marvel characters. It's just so silly, the idea that like Stark Industries is like selling merchandise of all these heroes and probably even villains. It finally looks like Marvel got their shit together and they're actually making great films. The Fabulous Emancipation of one Gwenpool, guest starring the A-Force. This movie's okay. Gwenpool takes the spotlight showing her liberation from Justin Hammer. Even though ironically Jared Leto's Justin Hammer is not even in this film, his role is basically just stolen by Star Trek's Ewan McGregor as Purple Man, who sometimes feels right for the role and most of the time feels like he's being a little too over the top. Margot Robbie is still great in the role, but she does steal this movie because despite being eventually shortened to just A-Force, the girls don't all meet until right before the climax. The team doesn't officially form until the very end. The great and beautiful Mary Elizabeth Winstead doesn't even properly get introduced as Domino until halfway into the film. And given that her and Ewan McGregor are married, they could have done something kind of cute and interesting, like, have him play Cable instead. Dazzler is really good in this film, and Jessica Jones deserved to be in more films. Honestly, wish all of them would have just appeared in a future Avengers film. The only major problem I have with this film is honestly Nico Moro in this. I love this character in the comics, honestly one of my favorites. But here, they just took the name from the comics and slapped it on someone completely unrelated. And making her just Gwen's sidekick makes me really wish they would have just called her something else. They have good chemistry, but it's just not Nico, damn it. We will see Gwen again, but Nico just disappears. Black Widow 84 is almost a great film. Like, there's a couple of scenes that are just beautiful. Gal Gadot's still great as Black Widow. The action's fun. Tigra starts off as the kind of ugly duckling that becomes hot and gets corrupted by power, and there is definitely a redemption arc there they decide to nope out of. Pedro Pascal as Sebastian Shaw is really good in the role. As a slimy, Trump-esque businessman, but he does care about his son. And of course, all the 80s nostalgia that was really still big at the time. But I feel like given the character of Sebastian Shaw, they probably should have played a little more into that 80s, like corruption, seedy business shit. And Sebastian gets the reality stone and grants everyone's wishes, like Black Widow resurrecting Hawkeye. And like, Chris Pine is still great as Hawkeye, but for whatever reason, instead of just resurrecting him like every other story ever told, they make him possess another person's body. Something they only bring up a few times in the film, and they definitely didn't think it through.
What the fuck were they thinking?
But the Linda Carter cameo at the very end was really cool, because she used to play Black Widow in the 70s series, and she's the only other person who played her. And they remade the intro. It's like really cool, man. But given they brought back Michael Keaton for Iron Man in the Spider-Man's film, they probably could have just used her there, but whatever. Make sure to like, share, comment your thoughts and opinions, and subscribe for the rest of the series.